In 1883, historian Sir John Robert Seeley published The Expansion of England, a work that would become one of the most influential interpretations of the British Empire. In it, he argued for a bold and ambitious idea, uniting Britain's vast dominions into a single political entity, a superstate that would later be called the Imperial Federation. At its peak, the British Empire ruled over a quarter of the world's landmass in population. It was the largest empire in history, and yet, paradoxically, it was never truly a unified state. London ruled directly over some territories, indirectly over others, and sometimes not at all. Entire dominions like Canada and Australia operated with their own governments, parliament, and national identities. So here's the question. If Britain controlled so much of the globe, why didn't it ever try to unify it all under a single government? Well, it actually did. It was called the Imperial Federation. It was one of the most ambitious and forgotten political vision of the 19th century. In 1883, a Cambridge historian named Sir John Robert Seeley published The Expansion of England, a book that argued that British Empire was not an accident, but rather the natural destiny of the English-speaking people. He made a provocative claim that the future of Britain didn't lie in Europe, but across the seas and the dominions, the white settler colonies like Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. To preserve that future, Seeley proposed that these dominions should not drift into independence, but instead form a federation, a new kind of political union, joining the Britain and her colonies into a global superstate. Think the United States, but worldwide, with queens still at the top, of course. This idea wasn't entirely new. Ever since the American Revolution, British thinkers had been haunted by the idea that distinct colonies could and did rebel. The Americans left the empire because they wanted autonomy, representation, and the right to make their own laws. The Imperial Federation was meant to solve this. Instead of colonies breaking away, they would be given equal representation in a new global parliament. You would have Canadian MPs, Australian senators, British lords, all sitting in the same imperial legislature. One army, one navy, one foreign policy, one empire, united from London to Melbourne. Believe it or not, this was not a fringe idea. There was an Imperial Federation League founded in London in 1884. It had chapters across the entire empire, including in Canada, South Africa, and in India. It held conferences, it published essays, newspapers, and debated it seriously. Prominent politicians, including Joseph, yes, the same Chamberlain family, supported it. Even Queen Victoria was reportedly intrigued. For a time, it looked like the dream might actually happen. So why didn't it? To answer that, you have to understand what the British Empire really was. And here's where the standard high school textbook narrative completely falls apart. The empire was never about central control. It was about decentralized hegemony. London provided protections, prestige, markets, and in return the colonies gave loyalty and resources. It was an empire based on informed consent. Trying to weld these parts into a single nation was frankly against the empire's own nature. The dominions didn't want equal representation. They wanted self-rule. And Britain didn't want to give up control over foreign policy or trade, especially not to Canadians or Australians. The dominions didn't trust each other either. Canada didn't want to govern alongside Australians, didn't want to share defense policy with South Africans, and nobody wanted to be tied to the chaos of Irish politics. Even language was a barrier. How do you create one government that includes both English-speaking Canadians and French-speaking? Then there's the big elephant in the room, India. Was India going to be part of this federation? Because if so, Were Indians going to be given the vote? Be allowed to sit in the Imperial Parliament? The entire logic of British Empire was based on racial hierarchy would collapse under a truly democratic federation. So the answer was no, India wouldn't be part of the federation. Not really. And that's when the cracks in the plan became obvious. The Imperial Federation was never going to include the whole empire. It was always going to be a white federation, a club of English-speaking settlers, colonies, a Greater Britain without the burden of its millions of Indian subjects. In that sense, the Imperial Federation was a fantasy, a utopia for imperial liberties who wanted to preserve the entire empire without the contradiction of ruling over people who didn't consent to be ruled. But empires didn't work that way. You can't make everyone equal and keep control. You can't give colonies full autonomy and expect them to follow your lead. So slowly, quietly, the idea faded. By the 1920s, after World War I, the dominions began drifting towards full independence. Anyway, the Statute of Westminster in 1931 made them fully sovereign states. The empire transitioned into the Commonwealth to loose family of nations. The dream was over. Today, the Imperial Federation is a historical curiosity, a what if, a forgotten vision of an alternate world where the British Empire became a global superstate. The idea of uniting English-speaking nation hasn't died. You still hear whispers about Kanzuk, a union between Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and the UK. Same language, similar cultures, shared heritage. It's not a coincidence. The dream of Imperial Federation never really went away. It just put on a new suit. But if history teaches us anything, it's this. Empires are easy to build. They are impossible to unify. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe. If you want to see more history videos, let me know in the comments and I'll make more. Y'all have a great night.